Hello, we're back again for part 3. Oh my gosh. If I, Mark, I could just let you run. Everybody listening for 24 hours. Just put it in your headset and just listen because it is fascinating. And oh, it touched my heart. But we cut it off on 2 because you were mentioning people, and I wanted to give them a good spot on here because they're very important to you. So shall we get into that?
Yeah, we shall.
Yeah. Being the
And this is the
healthcare person.
beauty. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
When we left off last time, I had a share about Sweden scholarship back in Mon,
Yeah.
and I talked about the new foundation, not scholarship, but a foundation that I'm working with here in Canada to put together to target those individuals, who are bright
Yeah.
and passionate and want to make difference in their own lives, families, and communities. But I want to set up a foundation to cover their through scholarship their entire journey through healthcare, because that level of empowerment is phenomenal. And those individuals, the gratitude, right, and appreciation they will have, that will then become exuded through the work they do.
Yeah.
That's wealth. Like I said, to
So,
me,
yeah.
true wealth is empowering others, right? And
Right.
and that touches on our concept of, you know, um, even like you said, it is powerful. So one of my mantras, one of my key mantras, no one hurts alone, no one heals alone. And this actually ties into this because the no one heals alone part depends on how you want to view it. There's different dimensions to that. And if we want to look at the current healthcare system as being, arguably broken, then it tells you that the system needs to be healed, right?
Not
And
all.
how do you heal that? You don't
Yeah.
heal it alone. You have to heal it with other transformational um, health systems leaders.
Are we talking
So
right across the board of Canada? Right? Are we gonna
I think we are, yeah, because a
have to?
lot of, yeah, yeah, like I mentioned to you, if you were going to kind of rank them,
Yeah.
Alberta second to last, and there's a lot of reasons we'll get into later for that. That's a different series. Currently in Canada, number one would be British Columbia, which ranks actually in the world behind Sweden and like Switzerland, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And there's reasons for that we can even talk about later. And then you have your up and comers, I call them, or say the province of Nova Scotia, for example, who are really angling to transform their system. And some of the powers that be, have left their ego at the door and are looking for real transformational leadership equations to fix their ongoing problems. And I do think they will. I can feel it. Like, they're on the right track. But here in Alberta, one of
Yes.
the
That's
difficulties
what I've
we've
heard.
had here, yeah, sure. So one of the difficulties with Alberta, that's been going on for a long time, is that along the way, Alberta became a little bit too business focused within the system, and the concept of business, or what we call KPIs or key performance indicators, it became, from a business perspective, a little bit too about the dollar and a little bit less about the healthcare.
Hmm.
Because when you marry healthcare and business, it's a fine balance, because of course the two do exist together, but there's a fine balance to which one takes center front, right? Like it has to be like the leader, and the reality is that business shouldn't be healthcare should lead first, and then business should be in the background. And one of the reasons why is because when you have business in the foreground, you end up getting a system, to simplify it, grossly oversimplified. It's called penny wise, pound foolish. So when you have key performance indicators or KPIs, you're basically trying to like balance this budget and cut out, more and more of the, of what you call the healthcare piece to have your upper, you're trying to have more profit and whatnot. And when you do that, the whole system ends up suffering. And then when you times that by 20 years, you end up marred in a system that becomes broken. And depending on who's in that system, they may or may not want to hire people to change it. They may, in fact, just want to maintain it and like let the system, chips fall where they may. That's not a good system. There's another piece of the system with KPIs, which was not more or less included, say here in Alberta. And those are what we call OKRs, right? Or what we call objectives and key realizations, or key um, results, right? So if you have KPIs or key performance indicators, but how do you measure key performance indicators? So yeah, at the end of a month we have a better budget, but what about it? What was the objective,
Right.
and key result that led to that? So when you don't include okay, OKRs, the acronym to KPIs. What you get what we call a top-down management system, where you can do all the studies that you want. You can introduce, oh, we got a 41-point plan, a 42-point plan. But when the frontline staff are not involved in the decision making, when the frontline staff are not consulted to see how they feel, when the frontline staff and you're treating them like almost like, say, concept of like cattle,
Yeah.
and you're not mentoring those individuals to be leaders, you're not allowing them to grow within their passions, the concept of vertical growth as opposed to just horizontal growth, where you're treating like they're just like replaceable. They're humans. And
Mhm.
when you stymie a human, it's like backing a dog into a corner.
Yeah.
Eventually it's going to bite back. And right now, you can look up studies, and you can look up what's the number one problem right now with, the healthcare system in Alberta. And what you'll see without context, you'll see the number one answer is it's a staffing problem. But the
Mhm.
context that's missing from there that you're not going to hear about, which should be front and center as well, is why do you have a staffing problem? Well,
Right.
there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is because the system here has is toxic. It's a very toxic system, and a lot of people don't want to work in it. They do want to be in healthcare, but they're not validated. They don't feel appreciated. They don't feel respected. I've met people who are, who have been in the system for 25 plus years, who've worked in other countries, and I remember saying to them, like, this, we should put in add a mentorship program in this unit or in this, ER, or we should have nurses on the wall
Yeah.
that you can go and talk to, and refer to them for mentorship, as opposed to blindly
Yeah.
asking someone who's going to rip you apart, make you cry.
Right.
Nurses eating their young, which is still exists heavily today. But you do that by propping up leadership. It's true. It's true
Yeah.
story. And then when you go and tell people about this, some of these people who've been around 25 years are like, you know what? Don't even bother. You're not talking to leadership here. You're just talking to people who are in roles, maintaining roles. They're following whatever top-down authorities.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, none of these people, quite frankly, give a shit about
And
what you
don't
have
want
to
to
say
work.
or what you could
Yeah.
inject, and they don't know. They don't care. And
Yeah.
then, fast forward 20 years in Alberta, and we have the second worst bang for the buck of any healthcare system. And all the leaders are like, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? You know what's wrong because you created it. That's what's
Yeah.
wrong.
That's right.
But accountability and responsibility is long gone out the window, and the concept of policies and procedures they were meant to guide practice, ethically and morally. But today that kind of lost its way. Um, that's really unfortunate. So what ended up happening, or what has manifested from that, instead of being like catalysts, for positive change, or
Yeah.
doing all these fantastic things, you have policies and procedures that have been put in place to sort of protect the upper layers, and avoid accountability and responsibility. So you can just kind of pass the buck to the staff. So, when people argue for like, oh, we should have staffing and patient ratios, and those things don't get followed through. The reason why is because if you have, you show up to a shift and you're late, or or other people have called in sick, and you have to look after 8 people, what's happening is that you're putting that pressure onto those staff members to handle that slack. And if something goes wrong, then you can throw them under a bus, the proverbial bus,
Yeah.
because you're like, hey, look, our policies and procedures say that you should be able to handle, 8 patients. And
Yeah.
that's not realistic, because if you made that rule that you only could only look after a maximum of 4 or 5, and then something
Right.
went wrong, then that means it come back on the leadership. But the leadership has now learned how to, basically manipulate, the policy and procedures that are in place to avoid accountability and responsibility, and push that ball onto frontline staff. And frontline staff, especially seniored staff, are
Mhm.
burnt out and tired, and they've been 20 years in the system, not validated, not be able to manifest within their own, or not have their own passions sort of, propped up.
Yeah.
They have all these ideas, but maybe the School of Medicine or Faculty of Medicine or physicians come up with all these great ideas. I'll tell you now, like, nurses are also just as brilliant.
Yeah.
And you could say, like, well, if you want to be a doctor, be a doctor. Yeah, well, sometimes socioeconomically and or life circumstances can prevent a person from doing that. So what you rank at in your profession, I'm sure there's probably hundreds of Albert Einsteins and Steve Jobs and, like them or not, Elon Musk. There's tons of brilliant people who are slaving away in rice fields as we speak in China and India right now.
Yeah.
And why are they not physicians or surgeons? It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with luck and socioeconomics, right? So, why is it that all the physicians here get center stage for all their different ingenuities and innovations, while the nurses are on the back end of that? It's because we don't have the leadership to prop us up.
Yeah.
We don't have the leadership to support us. I can
Yeah.
say I have a passion. I have a this concept for innovation, and people will be like, "Meh, you know,
Big deal.
you got 3 minutes. Sell me on this project, and if you
Yeah.
can't, we don't understand what you're talking about. Move on." And that's actually happened, and that's sad. So I've learned along the way that if you want to make change in healthcare, there's a few different ways to do it. One is to try to tackle the system at large as it is, and that's pretty exhausting because
Oh,
a toxic environment or culture will eat policy and procedure for breakfast.
right.
And the second way to do it, or the more powerful way, is to get into the education system and plant the seeds of tomorrow today for
Right.
change. And
Yeah.
that's the more powerful way to do it. And there are transformational, I'll call them again, like I don't even know, they won't know I'm calling them this, but I call them transformational health systems leaders. And these are some of the people that I've aligned with here thus far. And there's going to be more, of course, as it builds out. But there's some people here that have been involved with different projects who are very passionate and very powerful in my in terms powerful of of expression, of intelligence, of passion, and they see things the way we see things through transformational lens. um I mentioned earlier Indy Tour, who's my director right now of Qual Care in South. She's spent 25 years in the health care system and AHS, and now she's in the home care industry and learning all the different powers of networking and marketing and all the different voices that are out there and the collective powers. Because within the system, you're just sort of one person that you feel uncared for, but then out in the bigger system, you become part of a team, and that team has a voice, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of people want to hear that voice.
Yeah.
I mentioned before, with yourself, the first person on your podcast was Tammy Laudner, who not only is she, an amazing, you know, what deep-hearted. That's a very gross understatement, I think, for Tammy. Very deep-hearted, CEO of her own company, Peace of Mind Concierge. But she's also attached to this other brilliant woman named Cindy Sim,
Yeah.
who is the CEO of her own company called Team Care Pal. And interestingly enough, with Cindy, I'm also part of her team, and I serve as an advisory, voice, utilizing my own intellect and networks and capabilities, and working with people like her and Tammy on that Team Care Pal, adjacent to other activities that we do.
Yeah.
And Cindy's, created this like an app to have caregivers, give them a voice, give them, they can go on their little app and they can look up different resources that exist, with to help with their loved one. Because 70%, arguably, if not more, of people at home looking after a family member, looking after someone who comes from a hospital, looking after a father or mother with dementia, we call them caregivers, right? You are a caregiver to someone if they get sick, and at some point or another, if not more than 90%, but at any given time, probably 60 to 70% of people in Alberta are serving as a caregiver in one way or another, mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally, physically,
Yeah.
and what voice do they have? And a big part of what people like Cindy Sim, um, and another woman, two women, Sharon Anderson, who's the president of the AAG, or the Alberta Association of Gerontology, and she's partnered up, this is the education piece again, with this a woman, Jasneet Parmer. She's a
I'm sorry.
physician. Oh, hi, pussycat. No, it's okay. And Jasneet Parmar as an MD, her and Sharon have actually started this a course at the University of Alberta to kind of talk about educating students in there about
Right.
caregivers.
Hmm.
So Sharon is not just the president of the AEG or the Gerontology Association in Alberta, but she's like, again, a transformational health systems leader who wants to make a difference in the future of these people, today for tomorrow. Um, Also, I'm involved with some kind of ongoing research, early stage research, exploratory pieces with the current executive director of the ACCA, or the Alberta Continuing Care Association. And this woman is also, these are all brilliant people. So there's not enough props I could give,
Yeah.
but her name is Denise Milne.
Yeah.
And she has her background in psychology. My first degree was in psychology, so that's the link between us. And
Yeah.
I'm looking to do some studies with them, which are sort of underway in the early stages. And even her, her right hand person, Tara Preston, she's the executive in policy research and partnerships. Man, these guys are brilliant.
We're all women.
Darlene, yeah. I mean, I guess we're in healthcare. There are like there are some dudes out there too.
Yes, there's
I'm
some
sure
dudes.
I'll meet up with them. There's a gentleman actually. This guy, his name is Dan Sundial.
Wow.
He was a paramedic. Yeah, I know a couple
Yeah.
guys. He's a paramedic, and he does a lot of art. And he actually has his own sort of like a convention, if you would, or a symposium that he runs in Canmore every
Okay.
year, plus minus October, and again um minus COVID. But I actually had spoken at one of his convention slash symposium a few years ago before COVID, talking about my experiences with trauma. And Dan, he's a phenomenal artist. He's actually pretty well known. And when he does this trauma symposium, if you would,
Okay.
he does that because he's lost so many people in that field to suicide around
Yeah,
trauma.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
this is his way of helping give people a voice. That
Mhm.
guy's brilliant. You know,
Yeah.
um, Darlene Schindel. So me and her are really quite involved right now. She also a transformation leader. So me and her are working on this cool project. Back in 2007, I had created a journal. I called it the Journal of Health and Humanities.
Mhm.
Back in when I was in my fast track nursing days,
Mhm.
everything was wrote out: vision, strategy,
Yeah.
purpose, the whole shot. And basically, my concept at that time was to connect the term today is called collaborate, right? But I was trying to connect, say, like the fields like social work, pharmacy,
Yes.
medicine, and nursing together via this journal, but not just focused on like sort of academic publications,
Right.
but focused on more of a health and humanities. So if someone had a painting, someone had a short story or a poem, or if someone did have a publication, they could share,
Yeah.
and each member of the faculty could sit on the board, and also, a member from the faculty could sit on the board, and a member from, a student member representation from
Right.
each, body could sit on the board, and determine, and what would that do? It'd serve as a vehicle for intercollaboration, of studies, and have these individuals work together from a different kind of a lens. It
Right.
would, help foster leadership and mentorship. At that time, unfortunately, I think it was ahead of my time because the School of Nursing shut it down um, for whatever reasons.
Right.
So I actually dusted it off, so to speak, and I forwarded it to the current dean at MUN. Her name is April, and it was much more warmly received
Right.
17 years later. So myself and Darlene have been reaching out to, health focused sort of facilities here in Edmonton for education, like U of A and Norquest and NAIT and McEwen. And then I reached out to Mount Royal University in Calgary. And then we've just, made contact. I have a meeting on Monday with this woman who is from Alberta, but she also works and teaches at a high level, executive level at the University of Hawaii.
Wow.
So, and she's like, this is a cool idea. So, what you're talking about, you want to take a journal that connects the health fields, make it intercollegiate, and then also interprovincial, and then maybe international.
Oh,
And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do, and not just focused on academic, you know, uh,
yeah.
presentations, but the health and humanities side of the arts of
Yeah.
healing as well. And
Yes.
a lot of people are like, well, damn, that's kind of a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, it's a big deal. So let's do it. Like
Yes.
that would be a
Absolutely.
phenomenal bridge. So that project's currently underway, and even myself and another woman, her name is Balraj Van. Um, she's also a transformational leader. Myself, and Indy are involved with a couple of projects. One is particularly around um, um, propping concepts of education for internationally educated nurses, even nurses here, through like just cutting edge innovation. And I wouldn't even share too much about that right now, but
Mhm.
what we're looking to do is an absolute game changer. And the only way to even envision that is to have people like her come into play, and like
Yes.
an Indy and all these other individuals, because these people are brilliant, and you
Yeah.
you have to be brilliant to do this stuff. And you
Yeah.
have to be, a true change maker, a
Right.
leader. You've got to want to excel at making a change in the system at large.
Hmm.
We talked about, we talked a little bit about some of the problems in the healthcare system today, right?
Yeah.
Where policies and procedures of kind of regulations have kind of taken center stage, and but like I said, the way I look at things is that to each problem there's a solution. um there are no problems per se, right? Issues that exist are just problems that require solving. And when you partner up with people like these guys who are just absolute game changers, just line these people up and let them go, and see what kind of magic they can have.
Well, and I think what we're seeing now are nurses now opening their own little clinics,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
that is something that I would go to more so than
Yeah.
going to a doctor. And them being able to write prescriptions that gives, because right now the biggest thing, any rant and rave page of any community you see, where do I find a doctor? There's no doctors out there. Like there's none.
Yeah.
Even here in
Gross
BC, I think
shortage.
BC and in Alberta, I'm grateful that I have private healthcare, which is great. I love it because I have a lot of problems, so it's good for me. But those people out there, it's getting there where they can have that nurse's clinic over there instead of a doctor, and they can do the same thing as what a doctor does.
Yeah,
It's
I think, yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, Canada, if we're having all these issues, and again, in the simplest, you could get into the nitty-gritty of it all, but in the simplest way to imagine it, like they say, a rising tide lifts all ships.
yes,
So if you want to start to make a dent in the healthcare system, you have to, remember that everyone's like, you're dealing with humans. So,
right.
that's fine to have the business concept, but get back to the basics, put healthcare first, have a what I call, you have to replace the current top-down management system, which is just, it just shit flows downhill, and
Yes,
then it just ends, right?
yes,
Yeah, we're getting real.
yes,
So that's a useless system. What you want to have is what we call a flow management system. Have committees within the facilities, right? And have the frontline staff
yes.
empower them, acknowledge them, let them foster within their own passions and excel. Have leadership, mentorship roles. Have a committee in there to say like, hey, you've been around 20 25 years. You got any suggestions? Yeah, I sure do. And have that flow system where the voices at the bottom, who are the ones
Right.
carrying the heavy load, can provide a voice back up to the people who are making the decisions. And then those decisions can actually be formulated and implemented, guided by the voices at the bottom, not by surveys, but in real time via
Real
like
time.
committee
Yeah,
structure,
yeah.
and
That's the people that
and
are in it,
yeah,
100%, because they
yeah,
know
and yeah,
guessing.
and rise everyone, like doctors out there, I've spoken to some family doctors who are like, I have 1,200 clients, patients under my load. There's not enough physicians, and you're right. So if you want to rise everyone, and this is kind of an irony here too, the paramedics currently, as it stands, there is no like cross Canada degree program for them. Paramedics, and some of them are absolutely phenomenal, right?
Yeah,
Phenomenal. And they're out
yeah,
there busting their asses in those ambulances every day. And they come out of their education with no degree, right? It's like like an advanced diploma as an advanced care or paramedic or primary care paramedic, and they have just as much education, if not more, if not equivalent to a lot of nurses and or, cross between RTs, so implement a degree program. Let them go on to be able to do a master's and a PhD and level up that education. Let them become, advance their careers and level up nurses. Let nurses, like you said, like have more NPs. Let them empower them. Have more NP run clinics. To help kind of carry that weight. Lift everyone. Empower everybody.
everybody.
And then we can start to make a difference in the system. And then we also have to acknowledge, Alberta has to acknowledge that the best bang for your buck is in home care. And a lot of people out there
Yes,
don't know this, right? Healthcare, like as we see it today, is like, oh, what's healthcare? That's your doctor, that's or the hospital. I'm like, no, no, no. That's sick care. Sick care is somewhere you go when you already have a problem or you're already sick and you're looking for a solution based on the symptomology.
great.
Home care is proactive and preventative. You're coming into people's homes, you're helping them monitor medications, you're monitoring their blood pressure, and or if someone has like a little early onset dementia, you're putting someone there early,
Yeah,
you're building that connection. And if even at the sign of say like a pneumonia and or like a UTI, which are two massive causes of delirium in elderly individuals, as a, if you have someone in home care, which if you look at the cost of that home care to be proactive and preventative, catch a potential UTI, which would prevent the concept of a fall because of delirium, which could potentially decrease the risk of a broken hip,
mhm,
and then that hospital stay to go through the orthopedic surgeon, and the different fallout from that, and or plus minus infections, the
mhm,
difference between that like $100,000 plus minus that would take the care of that person with the broken hip.
yeah,
If you applied that to home care, you could basically employ several staff for a few years
yes,
to be preventative, and to be proactive and to keep that person at home longer, safer, and also
yeah,
reduce the burden of the family caregivers who then will not need the concept of, well, lessen the concept of respite because of burnout. I don't know what to do for mom and dad. I'm losing my mind. The
Yeah.
system's not well funded. It takes 6 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks to get someone from
Yeah.
AHS home care to come in here and see them. They may or may not prescribe an hour or 2 hours of time a week. Like, what do I do? I'm like, well, what you do is you take all these individuals, like the people I talk about, and you put us all together and we start coming up with solutions. It's not going to happen overnight, but Alberta's currently restructuring the 4 different areas, and it's
Yeah.
going to get messy a little bit for a while, and hopefully it works out well. But a home care is one of those places, like you gotta expand the role of the nurse, empower them, increase their skill set, just like we have what they call full scope LPNs here in Alberta. Full scope meaning they can basically do almost everything an RN can do, but they're not an RN. But the last time that RNs were empowered to do more, how long ago was that? I don't know. Right? It's been a long time. Yes, we have
Oh,
NPs now and we can open up clinics, but it's been long and slow because the business model has in short has taken over the healthcare model, and it's been an absolute disaster. So and physicians don't need to compete with NP clinics. You're not competing. There's enough sick people, and that can be cared for. We
yeah.
need more. There's more
You-
people out there who don't have a family doctor, then what's going to interfere with that family doctor's practice by opening up an NP clinic?
Right.
More home. You have to empower everyone. Have a degree program for the paramedics. You have to raise a skill set of nurses in the ER. Like if I'm working in an ER here in Canada and the person comes with a broken arm, depending on what ER I'm in, I have to wait for a physician to give them a Tylenol. I
Yeah.
cannot give them something for nausea. I cannot even send them for blood work. I can't even send them for an x-ray. Some places you can,
Wait.
depends on your relationship with the physician. But technically, I could say to them, go across the street to Shoppers, buy yourself A, B, and C, and take it, because here my hands are strung or tied, because here I'm basically a physician assistant. Yes,
Yeah.
you could say I'm a nurse, I'm educated, I'm skilled, but on many ERs here in Canada, I am literally nothing more than a physician assistant, because I can't say boo, even though I'm regulated, I have my own license. I can't say tickety boo to anyone unless that physician signs an order.
Yeah.
And my answer to that, and they could, you come up with whatever explanation they want in the system for that. Okay, so what? Then do what everyone else does. A first year medical student doing a clinical at Emerge, just doing a little run through, can do more than most nurses. They're like, oh, you want to try suturing? Here, come over. Let me show you how to do that. Second year, third year, like the things that they allow them to do, because they're empowering them. Whereas the nurses, they just keep pushing them down.
You
So
down.
empower the nurses. Let them do a 3 month course so that makes you feel better on suturing. The physician can still bill for it, they can still oversee it, but it frees up time so that nurse who likes to do it, you're empowering them. I want to do suturing. Can you do 3 month course? And then they can do the suturing that's been agreed and approved by the physician. But then that physician, instead of spending that 15, 20 minutes doing the suturing, they can go on to deal with other cases
There's
in the
it's
ER,
uh,
freeing up the wait line that's in ER while that nurse
yeah.
tends to it, recognizing the mechanism of injury, recognizing what suture needs to be done, the style,
Yeah.
the technique, how you're going to close it, clean it, etc. And the physician, yeah, okay, cool. And then you can look at it afterwards and say, yeah, you did a good job. I agree with that.
Yep.
Here's a prescription for antibiotics and or plus minus. There's so many
And
ways
they're
we
out
can
the
do
door.
this. And they're out the door, right?
Bring
And
on
and some
the
people say, like, why am I in the wait list for 14 hours? Because there's only 2 or 3 physicians in here, and a nurse can't do shit until they see you. So,
yes.
and we don't even have a system here. We can give them these little numbers or anything to be like, okay, when that beeps, come back. There's
Is it
nothing. You just
busy?
got to sit there 14 hours and be like, I don't know what's happening, because the system at large is also not teaching the population how the system works, right?
Right.
The
And
people are
that's
like,
why
I'm
when
so
we as
frustrated.
patients get super angry that
Yeah,
we're there for so long.
yeah, right.
And yeah, and
Because
that
they don't know what's happening, right? They don't
exactly
know how the
and,
system works.
and healing, all of a sudden, our healing is not healing because we're
No,
angry.
no. Yeah. So, and then people will say, like, well, you're a nurse, what can you do? And then in Canada, unfortunately, it's like not very much. And then it actually belittles the profession of nursing in Canada. Whereas if you go to the States, you'll see billboards like, you don't have to burden your physician, get a hold of this nurse. They'll come and see you at the home. They can do this, they can do this. And they're propped up. Whereas here, they're like, oh, you're a nurse? Yeah, whatever. It's not a well-respected profession because the profession itself has pushed it down so far. So, those are areas that need change, right? We need to
Yes.
change that. And you're not going to do that if you're a single voice. You can only do that by working with innovation today, by working with other leaders, other mentors, other change makers, other transformational health systems, passionate peoples who want to see a difference, and a collaborative, connected voice, right? And then, and that's kind of where I come into play. Like, someone say, what is one of your major roles that's kind of come out of all of these conversations? Just to be a positive vibes influencer. And it's okay to recognize the problems, but come up with a solution, provide a solution,
Right.
connect yourself with those individuals who you could collaborate with and come up with ideas. And there are people out there, like those people we talked about, who are just powerhouses of innovation. There are definitely absolute
Okay.
people here in the system today who are working together to institute change. How far we get, one step at a time, right? One step
Yes.
at a time. But do I have faith and belief that some of these people and some of the things, some of those pies I have my fingers on, do I think some of these things are going to be, these projects are going to be game changers? I do. I
Yeah.
do. Because if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be doing it,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and it's really fascinating to go from this conversation about at one point in your life, actually thinking to yourself, like, I don't know if I can survive the loss
Yeah.
of my partner, Sui-Yen, and then 11, almost 12 years later, to be hooking up with some of the biggest and brightest and most brilliant that Alberta has to offer and saying, like, you know what, let's just change the whole damn system,
Yes.
right? I mean, and empower other people and actually care.
Yeah.
Let's bring the word care back into healthcare,
Yeah.
and acknowledge people for who they are, which is, parts of the human lived family that we all share, right?
Right.
And one of the ways of getting these messages out there, like we said earlier, is exactly what you're doing. You're empowering other people and you're enabling the practice of storytelling, which
Yeah.
is one of the hallmarks of being a human. And that's what we're doing.
That's what we're
With
doing.
the You Do You podcast,
Yeah.
you're giving a voice to people who have a story to share, and we're being human. That's exactly
Human.
what this
Well,
is,
we're going
right?
back to being human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta
That's
be
and that's
human.
exactly what I do. The business, you want to talk about business and dollars and cents, like I said, none of that shit's gonna hold your hand when you're sick. So putting that at front and center in a healthcare model, whether it be AHS or whatever the case may be, you're gonna fail because humans, we don't operate at the end of the day, we don't work with business per se. Like we're not guided and governed by business. We're guided and governed by our abilities to care for each other and have the resources available to do that in the best possible way. The money will come, right?
Mhm.
Money was never meant to be, the end all be all God of our system, and it shouldn't be. We need to get back to the basics of love and caring and healing and providing and nurturing and validating and being empathetic and compassionate and seeing each other as a community, seeing each other as one world, one earth, right? One people's, and do it through what this gentleman, David Dibble, is another guy. So there you go. He's in the States. And he's like, he says he calls himself kind of like a love practitioner. This guy has a massive following on LinkedIn, like 25,000 or something. And he's like, yeah, basically I'm like love. He said, the answer is at the end of the day, love. Because
Yeah.
that one word love can emanate so many deeper meanings, right? Caring, empathy, compassion, seeing people first, meeting people where they are, not where you want them to be. No one hurts alone, no one heals alone. All of these things transframing, the concept of phoenix, the ashes, people who have survived trauma, post-traumatic growth. If you had to put one word that's going to, and all of our talks, if you want to put one word to lead it all, it's not going to be money, it's not going to be business, it's going to be love, right? And if love is that one central piece that guides the path, then we cannot fail.
Yes.
And ultimately, whether it's in the system that exists today or planting the seeds of tomorrow through the educational system, it's got to be done through passion and love, no matter what the message is. And
Right.
that's how we're
Right.
going to succeed.
You have to. You have to. And I have a I have a question for you. So you know how like you get a lot of students that are going to university and they want to become nurses. Half the time they're becoming nurse because their mom's a nurse, but you get the one that goes in and wants to become a nurse because that's her love. How do you keep that going through that whole entire school system? Whether like just keep it going because that's where she's coming for. She's not just going for the money and the blah blah blah. She has that passion to help heal. How do you keep that? How are we going to keep that going? Because university's hard. You get
It is hard. It is
yeah.
hard.
How do
You
you
got to be in there
have
for
a plan for that?
the right reason. Yeah, and
Because
and there
we need
is,
some
right.
good, we need some people to take care so the older generation nurses can retire and we have this beautiful source of kids coming through that love the nursing area. We got to keep it going. Is there a course for them to take or like what are you bringing in? Go on, tell me your plan.
So Yeah, here, I'll tell you what here's like
Come
I
on.
said. So there to every problem is problems are just solutions masked in challenge, right?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the real answer. What the future will do. I'll do my part in instituting it. But the real answer would be this, right? Would be those students who are in there need to try their best to find and acknowledge their own passions
Mm.
and to also connect with those people, whether they're in grades ahead of them or professionals out in the workforce, whatever the case may be, people who serve as mentor and leadership
Yeah.
and connect to them early to
Yeah.
maintain that no matter what they come across, because they're so vulnerable at that stage. It
Yeah.
doesn't take many people who are in it for the wrong reason to potentially sway them out of their thinking. So it's very important that they recognize that those people are to be kept to the outside and seek out and foster mentorship and leadership for themselves and then pass it on as it comes along. When they become a second year student, pass on mentorship and leadership to the first year. When they become a third, second, first, and so on. And in doing so, they'll keep their passions ignited. They'll learn more about leadership and mentorship. And there should be programs in facilities that already are instituted, and many there's not, like my journal concept that me and like
Yeah.
Darlene should know talking about, right?
Yeah.
Intercollegiate, interprovincial, maybe even international, things like that, where in the system itself you have leadership and mentorship built in through various activities.
Yes.
And another answer to this would be right now, the amount of senior leadership that we're losing in healthcare to retirement and burnout is
Yeah.
drastic. So one of my solutions to that would be put dollars where it matters. I would, even if someone's like, look, I can't do 25 years, I can only do 20. I'd say, okay, cool, that's fine. You can work the rest of those 5 years, come into the education system and use your 20 years of skill and wisdom and leadership and become an educator. And we will pay you enough to make it worth your while because it's necessary, because your wisdom and years of experience is exactly what the youth, right? Because
Need.
students aren't students. They're not. Every student you meet are going to be tomorrow's executives. They're
Yeah.
going to be tomorrow's directives. They're going to be tomorrow's managers. Students aren't students. They're just younger minds that need the proper guidance, mentorship, and leadership to make sure that they're successful at whatever they end up becoming. And
Yeah.
that's how we have to see them. So
Yes.
instead of letting these people retire, bring them into the system and let them be leaders for who they are. Right?
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
that's your two-part solution to that.
Yeah. I believe that. I think every kid that or every student that's coming into anything needs to have a mentor or leadership, anything, whether it's not in the school or they have an ability to reach out to a program,
Yeah, yeah.
to
And it should be in the
it,
program, already in the program.
yeah, and we already have big brothers and big sisters for those little kids, but why don't we have that? Doesn't
Right.
have to be called big brothers
There's
for
we've been around so long. I
yeah.
mean, the pyramids in Egypt were built what 3,500 years BC. Think of how brilliant. Why reinvent the wheel, right? Like, it's kind of funny in Canada. Canada has 13 health systems, like health regions, right? Based on
Yeah.
province and whatnot. And they do not, for the most part, collaborate together, right?
Well,
The leadership of the absolute leadership of this country
yeah.
is dropping the ball, right? So the approach is probably not going to come from upper leadership. It's going to have to come from change makers who implement themselves in the system at the
Yeah.
level of the system, particularly at the level of education, and start to foster and nurture this approach
Right.
so that hopefully within another generation or two, the powers that these future powers to be
Yeah.
will be able to, like, we need to collaborate amongst provinces. We need to form a super committee. We need to, we need to have mentorship and leadership programs built in. We need to be recruiting those senior nurses who are looking to get out of the system. Should have a path for them to come back into the education system to share their wealth of wisdom and experience, and not to let them just go off to the side, because that's,
Oh, it's
it's like tearing up,
yeah.
encyclopedias of knowledge. Every human that lives is they're within themselves an encyclopedia. Why would you let that go? Right. So,
Yeah.
we do need transformational leaders within the system to be able to
Coming.
not only see
Yeah,
the
like,
problem, but to be able to see the solution. Right. And they're out there. We are out there. And like I said, come hell or high water, huh,
yeah,
you
they're
come
gonna
back
do
in
it.
2 years and let's see what gets done. And I
I can't wait.
guarantee you,
2 years. No, it won't be
that'd
two
be
years
really
until I
fun.
talk to you again.
No, no,
It
of
won't
course not.
be.
No,
It won't be.
but the future's bright if you want to choose to see it as bright, you know?
Well, I see it as bright. I think there's lots of change coming. I believe that this,
Yeah,
being my kid being 25, I think this set of children
yeah,
were raised by us
yeah,
that have that vision and dreams and passion. And I think they're the ones that are going to come in and change the world and change the
yeah,
system slowly.
yeah.
Not going
So,
to happen
yeah,
overnight, for God's sakes. Didn't take us overnight to get to where we are.
yeah,
But they're the front runners right now.
yeah. And
Just
they need the
happens.
leadership and mentorship to realize it, right?
Absolutely.
So
And I think it
don't
comes.
let those people retire.
No, and I absolutely, it was so funny. A quick story. When I got my
Of
COVID
course.
shot second time here in Vernon in a little little gym, it was an older lady, and I said to her, I said, "Oh, like we had a conversation." I said, "What do you do? Why are you here? What's going on?" She goes, "Well, I'm a retired nurse." And she came out of retirement to do COVID shots. And I thought that was just brilliant because she was in her passion. She loved that she was giving back. And here's a lady that after COVID and all the shots goes back to her house and is forgotten. Where she could be sitting at front stage and having story time.
Yeah. You know how, especially in the States and whatnot, they provide honorary degrees, right, to individuals who have had, tremendous impact
Yep.
with their profession and or the community. In my view, if you have 20 plus years of experience as a nurse and you need to have a master's degree to be able to go in there and teach, once you have 20, 25 years experience,
Master's
whether
degree.
you have it or not, go do one or two, like whatever, a course on education, and
Mhm.
then provide that person based on that experience and based on their
Yeah.
wisdom, that if they require it, that honorary degree in masters to enable them to come to the university and teach.
Yes.
Because a lot of people who follow the academic route, they're so marred in the academic route, they some of
That's
them don't
correct.
have a lot of experience in the real world or lived experience to share. And
Yeah.
yeah, sure, they're good educators, but you really want to have people who have been out there, and have been around the world and experienced love and loss, and then bring them back in to share their stories built into the education, because
Yes.
that's your authenticity. And those are the people who really impact, those, and help plant those seeds of tomorrow today, right? It's not
Yes.
just the people, like some physicians they complain, oh, this guy doesn't have a good bedside manner. What do you expect? Went from high school studying his butt off to, maybe a biochemistry degree, studying his butt off, right into med school, studying his butt off, did his rotation, and now he's a physician. The guy's never
I was
even
tired.
traveled outside of his city. Yeah, and maybe he's
I'm
never been
tired.
anywhere in his life.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah, you're a great, brilliant physician. I'm not taking anything away from that. What I'm saying is that what lived experience you bring to the table to provide care that's actually authentic through vibe and energy, and
Right.
having that person on the other side of you going like, you're providing this to me, and I get it that you really get it. You're not just regurgitating, parroting, data and statistic and analysis came out of a book.
Right.
It's more than that, and that's where I think a potential solution, to those future educators could be, right? If they need the honorary degree with some, extra education, then do it and provide it.
Yeah. Do
Get
it.
those voices heard, find a way,
Yeah.
and maybe even this journal, that me and Darlene are pushing,
Yeah. Could be
maybe that could be
fun.
a part of it, right? Maybe
Yes.
we could go, have a section, where you're a retired nurse, share your stories, and we'll give you an actual dedicated page
Yes.
to, providing your whatever short
Yeah.
stories and or whatever the case may be, providing your voice, on one of those pages in the journal. Let's
Nurse of
see.
the month, nurse of the year, retired nurse of the
Yeah,
month. It'll be fun.
yeah,
It'd be an interesting
yeah,
thing for students to go through and say, wow,
yeah,
like, because
yeah.
that's that positivity that's reinforced for
Yes,
them to
yes,
continue instead of dropping out going, this is too tough. I don't think I can do it. And that's what they need. That's what they need.
yes.
That's what
Yeah,
everybody needs, actually. Everybody in any profession.
how
Just
cool would that be, right? To be in a student-run journal with, existing faculty also on the board, right? To look at articles, but then
yeah,
you also have the voice of
yeah,
nurses who are like retired and or retiring to share stories of the
yeah.
field. I mean, you're that's what I call flow management. You're
Oh,
taking
right.
every part of that career and you're just creating a flow. Like, how amazing from a perspective of mentorship and leadership would that not be, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Let's see.
absolutely.
That's
That's
that's one
get
of the
on
things
it.
I also want to do. I'm on it.
I
Me and
get on
Darlene
it.
are
And
all over it. We're
I
David
want to be
Dibble, and
subscribed to it. I want to read it
yeah,
anyways.
it's going to be something.
It's gonna, I
Right? Like,
believe you. I believe you. You don't have to convince me. I believe you. This has been a
yeah,
fantastic talk. I love it. I love it. And we're coming back for, I don't know what kind of part we're gonna have, but
yeah, yeah. It's fine. Of course.
yeah, we're gonna do
Yeah.
something because it's great. And you're off to Regina. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my
Yes.
contract currently ends this week, and I'll start in Regina ER, Regina General Trauma One level, a level one trauma center in
Yep.
Regina to do an ER contract, being an
Yeah.
advanced critical care trauma trained nurse. Provide my skill set there. But
Nice.
while I'm there, I'll still be very, involved with, Cindy and Balraj and Indy and Sharon's, and because now I'm starting to put myself on boards and committees, and I'm
That's
starting to really inject myself in the
yep.
associations and organizations to help connect these people through being a positive vibe influence, be a transformational health systems leader, and connect these people and just like, light a fire under everyone's proverbial ass, right?
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be
If it
great. I'm
wasn't
glad
there
you're about
already.
that. I'm glad you're, come on, you're here. You're
That's
here
right.
for a reason. We met
Right.
for a
That's
reason.
right. That's right. That's right. Right. And like I
That's
said, you're going, we're back to the roots here. I'm sharing a story and then you're helping to amplify it. You're like the person in the old cave and I'm talking and you're drawing these like buffalo and shit on the wall. That's kind of like what you're doing, except it's a podcast.
the
But
podcast.
it's not unlike that. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We've
No,
just used modern day technology and innovation to change the delivery system, but we're
absolutely.
still doing what it is that makes humans human, right?
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
storytelling and we're
We're
sharing,
storytelling. We love
and
stories.
and it's
I
and
love
it's
stories.
all being done through love, right? Love. That's
Love
that's
and a
love.
bit of, and a lot of kindness. I love kindness.
Yes. A lot of kindness.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll say good night and goodbye.
Thank you.
Not goodbye,
That's
because
right.
we'll be talking again. And
That's right.
I have enjoyed this so much. This
Yeah.
part three, and there's going to be more parts, more parts. I
Yeah.
love it
We'll
so
come
much.
back to it. Let's
Yeah,
see. Let's see.
yeah.
Yeah, for
Awesome.
sure. Thank you.
Okay,
It's
well,
been
have a
my pleasure.
wonderful trip to Regina. If anyone doesn't know where that is, that's Canada in
Yeah.
Saskatchewan, longest province word in the
Yeah.
world, right? Name in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Well, we can spell it, except
Yeah.
Canadians.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's true. So yeah,
Yeah.
have a wonderful
Thank
trip
you.
there. Safe trip, and we'll talk to you soon.
And thank you for the platform. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.